When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
This conversation with Jason Eck comes from our archives, but there's no better moment to bring it forward again. Since this episode was first recorded, Coach Eck has risen into the leadership role of head coach at New Mexico, where he delivered a historic turnaround in his first season. The Lobos finished 9-3, their best record since 1982, earning Eck the 2025 Mountain West Coach of the Year honors. A bowl victory would give the program its first 10-win season in 43 years, a milestone that reflects both performance and culture. And for that, he was rewarded with a contract extension till 2030. What makes this archived episode compelling today is how clearly you can hear the foundations of the leader he has become. Coach Eck talks honestly about family alignment, communication, navigating coaching moves, integrating kids into the profession, and staying grounded in the middle of a demanding career. These are habits that travel with the coach, the values that shape a staff, and the traits players feel long before they show up in the win column. This conversation pairs naturally with an important piece of Eck's story on Coaching Coordinator, his culture-centered interview with Rob Pomazak inside the Culture OS series, which is featured in the Coach and Coordinator AI Culture OS Companion. That episode anchors the companion's knowledge base and expands on the many themes you'll hear today: clarity, standards, communication, and an intentional approach to building programs that last. Listening now with the benefits of hindsight, you can see the through line in Eck's leadership. The values he describes here didn't just shape his family or his early career, they became the backbone of a program that has taken a major step forward. Let's revisit the thinking and habits behind one of college football's emerging head coaches, Jason Eck. Welcome to another episode of Coach and Coordinator Podcast. Our guest today is someone who I got to know while he was at Ball State University. At the time, I was coaching high school ball, and one of my players was on scholarship there, so I had the opportunity to meet Jason. As with most coaches in this profession, things are not always stable. There's moves required, whether that's from another high school in your area or across the country, and it's something that Coach Eck has had to face. And we're going to hear some great ideas today as we head into the season for keeping our priorities straight, finding that balance in our life, and I'm excited about this episode and what we have to share today. So here's our guest host, Joel Nellis with Jason Eck.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, coaches, and today we're going to be speaking with offensive line coach and run game coordinator at South Dakota State University, Jason Eck. Jason Eck was hired as the coach of the Jackrabbit offensive line in January of 2016, bringing with him 17 years of college coaching experience. Following the 2016 season, Eck was promoted to run game coordinator. During his first season with the Jackrabbits, SDSU featured one of the most prolific offenses in the Missouri Valley Conference and the Football Championship Subdivision, FCS, posting an average of 33.2 points a game with 437 yards of total offense per game. In league contests, SDSU ranked second out of 10 teams in allowing only 11 sacks and ranked first in 5 different offensive categories. This past season, the Jackrabbits completed the winningest season in school history with an 11-3 record, reaching the third round of the FCS playoffs for the first time in school history. They improved their scoring offense by nearly 5 points a game and accumulated over 6,000 yards of total offense. Eck has coached at the collegiate level since 1999, including serving as the run game coordinator and offensive line coach at Montana State in 2015. In his lone season with the Bobcats, Eck helped coach an offense that led the football championship subdivision in yards per play and ranked fourth in total offense with an average of 519 yards per game. Joining the Jackrabbits coaching staff marked a return to the Midwest for Eck, who coached a record-setting offense at Minnesota State Mankato during back-to-back Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference Championships in 2013 and 14. He served as the offensive line coach in 2013 and added offensive coordinator duties in 2014 as the Mavericks advanced to the NCAA Division II championship game. A 1999 graduate of Wisconsin, Eck played on the Badgers' 1998 Big Ten championship team, which went on to win the Rose Bowl. He began his coaching career as a graduate assistant at Wisconsin under head coach Barry Alvarez and later moved on to Colorado. He has also served as coaching stints at Idaho, Winona State, Ball State, Hampton, and Western Illinois. Coach Eck, welcome to the podcast.
Joel, it's great to be on with you.
All right, let's start in talking about the stars of your home team, beginning with your wife. How did you meet this special woman?
I met my wife when I was at the University of Wisconsin as a graduate assistant, and was very fortunate to meet her. And she was not a huge football fan when we met. Her family had grown up more basketball people. Her father had season tickets to Wisconsin basketball, and she'd gone to a lot of those games. But met her, dated, she did pretty well getting through the first season, which was always a big struggle when you're coaching the time commitment during the season. And the next year that I got hired at the University of Colorado, and I kind of had to make that decision, step this up or pass on, because she wasn't just going to move out there if we didn't have a ring on her finger. And I ended up proposing, and we got married, and that was the start of it. Now she's really grown to being the best coach's wife I could ever ask for. We've moved quite a bit in our career. She's handled that. It's not always easy, but she's jumped into it with 2 feet. A great mother to our 4 kids. I think she's a great second mother to our players here. Tries to always look out for our guys here and been very involved with the coaching side of things as far as the coaches' wives. And now she's even on the national board of directors for the American Football Coaches' Wives Association. So really blessed that Kimberly came into my life.
What does she, if any time, right, with 4 kids and you coaching, what are some maybe interests or passions? I know you talked, if you want to even elaborate more about what she does with the American Football Coaches Wives Association. What does she have time? What are her interests and passions outside of managing the house and things like that?
My wife, when I met her, she was studying, got a degree in fashion marketing, which I'd say that's probably her truest passion. But when you've lived in towns such as Brookings, South Dakota, and Moscow, Idaho, and Macomb, Illinois, and Muncie, Indiana, those aren't exactly like Milan and Paris when it comes to fashion. So she reminds me of that. Again, I'm the one who gets to follow my passions, and she's had to adjust a little bit. She also got a degree in cosmetology, which she did for a little while, but it's good for the fact that you can get a job anywhere. I mean, you can get your hair cut anywhere, hair style, but it's not great because you got to build the clientele, and that's tough when you're moving around. So really, she's done a great job focusing on our kids. She does some nanny now, or she'll watch, in addition to watching my littlest one, we have a 2-year-old as our youngest, she'll watch some other young kids during the school year. But she's really got into, really kind of embraced being a coach's wife and feels a lot of strong connection with other coaches' wives just because of the shared understanding of what you go through as a coach's wife. It's a lot different than other professions. And coaches' wives just kind of get it. So she's taken a great interest in that. And first she became involved just going to the coaches' convention. And they have a wives group that meets at the annual national convention. And after a couple of years in that, they asked her to run, and now she got a board of directors, and she heads up social media. So she knows how to work Instagram and the Twitter and the Pinterest and all that for social media. She also writes a blog, which I think she really enjoys, Beauty Babes and Ball, which goes back to her love of kind of the beauty industry. That was her job when she was in college. She worked at like a clinic and Estee Lauder makeup counter, so she likes that a lot. And then Babes, having babies. She loves kids. And then she loves ball. She's really gotten in. And it's a huge, definitely my biggest fan, and a pretty darn big football fan right now.
That's awesome. She might be next on the podcast list. You might need to ever hop on. Yeah.
They do like a Facebook Live Periscope show every few weeks for the Coaches Alliance Association for the members. It's kind of a members only little deal, and I know she really enjoys doing that.
Very cool. What is maybe the single character trait that makes her so invaluable in your life?
Well, I think she's really unselfish. She sacrificed probably some of her career goals and dreams, and for myself and for her kid. her unselfishness and her unconditional love and support of myself and our boys is really powerful. And I think that's something you really got to look at I would tell a young coach who is single is you got to find a great woman who's really going to be a great example and a great mother, because there's going to be some times during the season where they're going to really have it's not a 50-50 parenting deal. It might be a 90-10 where they're doing 90% of the parenting at certain times of the year. So you want to make sure that you have a great woman who's really going to be a strong role model for your kids.
I just think about this, like you said, I'm not coming out there without a ring, right? You say that's something that she's grown into the role sometimes, right? Most like, maybe I may make the parallel as strong as like recruiting. You're always trying to find that guy that's ready-made versus someone that can be developed, right? I don't necessarily think every time you find a girlfriend or a significant other, you're going to say, oh, you can identify her right away as the coach's wife, right? Like coach's wife. Going to be some development and growing pains along the way, correct? In that process?
No question. Because there's definitely learning. I think you've got to get used to the grind of the season. I definitely think she has grown into it, and we could do crazy things. I think if you had asked her 20 years ago if she would ever be a huge football fan, she would have said, no, you're crazy. But she's become a huge football fan just because she knows that's our livelihood. That's how we pay the bills every month, and that's a big part of our family and who we are.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about the other members of your starting lineup, your kids. Maybe you want to give us their names and ages and maybe some of the things they're interested in currently.
Yep. My oldest is Quentin. He is 15 years old. He'll be a sophomore at Brookings High School. He's a very, very good student. He was very bummed. He had an A- the spring semester. Besides that, he had all A's this year. So he's a very good student, which I'm very proud of. He also is involved with cross country and track. I was proud of him. He was a varsity cross country runner, which probably means I'm the only O-line coach in the country. His son is a cross country, and he's a 2-miler in track. He takes after his mom. His mom was a runner. So he's doing very well with that, with cross country and track. Very good in school. He likes computers a lot, likes video games. Jackson, who is 13 years old, he'll be an 8th grader next year. Got the chance to see him play a lot of baseball this summer. It's nice. He's at track this spring as well, and then he loves basketball a lot. He's doing some summer basketball with the high school coaches here, and then football. Loves football as well. A little bit more of a still guy. Played mostly running back and quarterback and linebacker last year, so not quite O-line. I think he loves team sports a lot. And my third son, Palmer, is 7. He'll be a 2nd grader this year. He likes video games, but he loves sports a lot too. He's playing baseball this summer. Last game this Thursday, get a chance to watch him. And then he did basketball this year. He likes soccer. He does flag football. He's just pretty busy. And then our youngest, Maverick, is 2. He'll turn 3 this fall. He's a little ornery guy, so we'll see. I think he's pretty aggressive. Maybe the most aggressive kid and our fastest kid for his age. He's always trying to keep up with his older brothers, wrestling his older brothers. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes with interest as we go, but he's got a lot of personality. So we're very, very blessed to have 4 sons.
Man, what maybe makes, you kind of went into good detail with all those kids. You said your youngest one is maybe the aggressor, going to be the fast one. With your older 3, what is maybe a unique characteristic about them that is so encouraging to you?
I think the oldest one is really a thinker. We'll see him pacing around sometimes and thinking to himself, and he's opinionated. He has a lot of strong thoughts. He likes to look up stuff. He has really a creative mind. I think Jackson, the second one, is just a really good teammate. I'm proud of that. He's a really good teammate. He's always very supportive, and just watched him in baseball. If he's out of the game, he's usually the first person off the bench to congratulate guys coming in off the field or celebrate when a guy scores a run. So I'm very proud of that. What kind of teammate and friend he is. And then Palma, it's a really fun age. I think that's something that I've been kind of lucky where my kids were spread out a little bit, is enjoy that age when kids are, I don't know when it goes to, but probably like 5 or 6 to like 10 or 11. There's that stage where they just love to be around you. They love to play catch with dad. They love to do that. Don't take that for granted, because I think you forget that time leaves and kids get older. Well, my 13-year-old wants to go and hang with his buddies and have sleepovers and really kind of cherish that time. My 7-year-old likes nothing better than to play catch with baseball gloves and stuff. And then I think the 2-year-old's got a fun personality. He loves to wrestle, and he's got a little stubbornness to him and a little attitude to him. But sometimes that makes a great football player. So that's my wife reminds me of sometimes.
It is. There's some kids that you can see are like, sometimes the kids that are bad at home are going on the field because they got a little something extra. I can think of a couple of kids on our team that are exactly like that. Like,
That's right.
can't get along with their parents, but man, they can sure as heck play football because they got an edge. So your kids are involved in a lot of sports, and you're at an age when they're being coached by a lot of people. You're a great coach in your own right, and I think coaching sort of, if you're a coach, it kind of is hard to turn that off. How do you stay away from being that dad to your kids' coaches or at kids' games when you're getting a chance to watch them?
I try to take a real hands-off approach with my kids' coaches. Again, I never get offer any advice or any thoughts. Now if they would, seek me out and ask me a question or something, I'd be willing to help or give some of that. I mean, I've had maybe a coach come up and ask me something about teaching the center on a snap or something if they've had problems, but that's not something I'm looking to volunteer. I mean, that's kind of their deal, and let them go with it. Try to be positive voice in the stands, just be encouraging, coaching effort. I may, after a game or something, talk with my son about something, maybe give him a tip on something after a game, but I want to make sure I think it's always good to bring up the positive first. I think it's still good with your own players. I think it's a great strategy if you're going to give them a tip on something they correct. Hey, you really did a great job of hustling down the field and beating out that play, and then maybe saying something, hey, make sure you hit the cutoff man, not try to throw it all the way there, something like that. And whatever, you can apply that to every sport, but try to find a positive, correcting something so that you're not dwelling on the negative. Give them a little praise first, and then bringing the question of bringing what they can work on. I think that's just a good strategy in general when coaching.
I have to believe, it's funny, I tweeted this out a little bit ago. There's a dad in our league of my son's 3rd and 4th grade team, and he's claiming he told someone that he wants to win the championship this year. And at this age, it really doesn't matter. Like, there's 2 dads that are, myself and another dad, are varsity football coaches. And that's not a huge deal, but if we don't care about it, you shouldn't care about it. I think it's got to be pretty cool to have a college level coach not freak out or not all over his kid, right? I think there's a lot of power in that of not being that dad when you have that background and skill set and could say something, and you just let it play out. If those coaches a little bit of freedom in their own right, and then your kid doesn't have too much pressure, he's not worried that dad holds it in too high of a regard, I guess.
And you learn, I think one of the biggest things, especially with youth football, is you want to make sure it's really fun, because I think everyone can remember some point in their college career, high school career, a point where football wasn't real fun, where it was a grind. And I think when you introduce that too young to kids, I really probably regret it. I think I had my 2 sons play tackle football too early. We lived out in Virginia for a year, and I think they were in 3rd and 1st grade, and they played tackle football. And I think the league was a little bit taken too serious. It was coaching guys too hard. It had guys doing up downs and stuff at that age, and I think they had a polarizing effect. And that was the only year my oldest son ever played football, and I think it turned him off. Now, I think it probably stoked my 1st grader, and he ended up taking, I think, a year or 2 off of tackle football after that because we moved to a place where they didn't have tackle football at that age. But looking back, I think that was too early to start, and that's what I really encourage everybody who's coaching youth football is make it fun, because kids develop at so many different ages that there might be a kid who really would develop in his junior, senior, could be a pretty darn good high school football player who might get turned off on it. If the fun level compared to the hard work level is too much at a young age. So that's something I kind of learned through myself, through trial and error, and failing on it. But I think flag football leagues are great that they're starting out that. My youngest one is playing that. My 3rd son is playing that, who's a 7-year-old, and I think that's great. I mean, I don't really think you get pads on until you get to, at minimum, junior high, if not high school age. You just want to make sure you're working some of the skills that play into play football before that.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'm 100% a fan of that philosophy. So, all right, next we're going to move into a section called We Make the Call and discuss how your family has navigated some of those important decisions. And you've had a lot of moves in your career, but let's start out with the kids discussion, because you were coming up and trying to decide, and you had some early movement in your career. When discussing having kids, how did you and your wife decide what was the right time?
There's no perfect time to have kids. Okay. And I think you try to be, life is fickle that way. When you think you have the perfect time, it can blow up in your face. So I do think there's some benefit to not having kids really young. Again, I wouldn't, recommend. I got married fairly young. I got married when I was 24, almost 25, which is fairly young these days. But I think between 25 and 30 is probably a better time for most people. And I do think it's worth living with your wife a little bit before you have kids, but there's no perfect time. And I think when you try to, probably the biggest lesson we had that we had our first two kids. We had one when I was a graduate assistant at Colorado, which is tough, but again, there's no perfect time. And then we had our second child when we got hired at the University of Idaho, which was my first time job. And then we waited a little bit. We were waiting for the perfect time. And then I got hired at Ball State University, which, at the time was the best job, highest paying job I had had up to that point. And so got through the first year there, kind of felt it out. And then we decided to have our third baby then. And then sure enough, we didn't have a great year that year. We went 4-8, and the head coach got let go, and I didn't get retained. And now I think the day I found out I wasn't getting retained, that night, my wife went to labor with our third one. So it's tough. In college coaching, so much can change even in 9 months or with the year from when you plan to have a baby to have one. So I don't think there's a perfect time. I mean, probably it's a little easier if you have a baby in the off season compared to during the season. But I've had 2 of our 4 kids during the season, and you make it work. You make it work and hope work with good people who are flexible or work with you so you're never going to have to miss anything. And I was very fortunate with both of our boys that were born during the season. I got to be around for everything. I haven't missed out on anything. So again, I think don't try to find the perfect time. I think there is not a perfect time, and I think you can almost lead to paralysis if you're waiting for the perfect time to wait too long.
Well, that's good insight. I think that's really valuable for a lot of coaches to hear. And you've done a number of different had it happen a number of different ways. So there's a lot of value there. When discussing a new job with your wife, what are things you try to evaluate together before making a decision? And if your kids are old enough, what level would you ask or involve them in the decision-making process?
To start out, I think that I probably made a mistake on some of the moves I made when I was a young coach of not including my wife as much in the decision. And that's a mistake. You want to make sure it's the right move for the family. And again, I think I probably selfishly at times said, well, this is definitely the right move for my career. So I kind of treat her like, well, this was not really a discussion. It was a foregone conclusion. And in hindsight, maybe those ones I thought were great moves in the end didn't end up being, the move I thought they were going to be. So I would highly recommend as soon as you're talking to a guy on the other staff, you're talking to the head coach, and you're thinking of going for an interview in a place, I think you want to make sure you're discussing it with your wife, making sure that you're not wasting your time, making sure she's on board with it. I think that's very important because there's a lot of factors that go into it. And really, I think what I've learned is you want to make sure you're in a good situation for your family where you're happy, where you love what you're doing, but you're also around good people. It's a positive situation for your whole family. And that is every bit as important as just trying to coach at the highest level or coach at the best paying job. There's no price for happiness and having a family that's on board and happy. So getting to that, I think what I've gotten to life, which has been pretty, is creating a list. What are the pros and cons of a move? What are the advantages for myself? What are the advantages for my wife? What are the advantages for my kids? And then what are the disadvantages to all those? And really trying to weigh it out. And the other thing I would say is through experience, I've had a few decisions that were 55-45 or 60-40, where 60% is telling me to leave, but maybe 40 or 45 is telling me to stay. And I think through experience, those are not moves you want to make. You want to make sure it's something that's 80-90% advantages of going, because you keep doing a good job where you are. You just keep focusing on the task at hand, and you're going to have opportunities that come across your plate over time. So you really want to make sure before you start moving your family that it really is a great opportunity that might not be a total no-brainer, but it's close to that. Because I also think as your children get older, moves get a little harder. I think you want to have more of your moves when your kids are not yet in school age or early elementary, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I think those are easier moves. And when you start getting kids older, and part of it is just a simple thing. My oldest son's going to be a sophomore. The year he was in 8th grade, I interviewed for a job, and dad all of a sudden is home for a night. Kids kind of start realizing them, and they realize, Dad hasn't been recruiting. Where's Dad going? Why are we taking Dad to the airport? That type of thing. So we did have discussions with them, and that led me to turning down a job that was a pretty significant raise. I didn't think it was the overall, right move for the whole family. And I think it's tough for kids. They start getting into high school age or even junior high age. They have a lot of strong connections. And that's something you definitely have to think about. So I would think when your kids start getting into junior high, high school, certainly high school, you want to have some of those discussions with them, and timing of moves becomes a lot more important as your kids get older.
Yeah. And I've also heard with a number of guys that come through our school, Coach Tenney obviously has a great relationship with a lot of coaches. I've had a chance to talk to a number of guys. And again, I understand at this point in time, and guys in the profession have come in at different points. But you do hear stories of, yeah, like it's not the best situation, but I work here and my wife and kids live somewhere else because I took a job, and sometimes it's not a matter of I took a job, it's I got fired, but they liked it there and so they stayed. So I understand that. I'm not here to judge those guys and say, hey, but you just have to be mindful that if you can prevent that situation, I think you'd want to.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about it. And, the longest I have spent along with my wife is about 6 months. There was one time where I got hired a job in January, and then we did move the family out to July, and that was a long time. And that was, we were dealing with trying to sell a house that we never did get sold, and we had to rent out. That's not ideal. And it was a goofy deal because I kind of wasn't in the best situation. It was going to look again, and my wife even saw it coming. I thought maybe it wasn't a good idea for us to move because of it. But I would just say this. I think you want to, sometimes those things might be unavoidable, but you want to try to minimize that, because I do think it's the best situation for kids to be around both parents. Even if it's the season and it's maybe 4 or 5 days a week, they're going to bed before you get home. Well, I still think there's some value in those other 2 days. So I do think you want to minimize that as much as you can, though sometimes it may be unavoidable. It might work better for some people than others, but in my experience, I found that to be probably one of the worst things about coaching, the toughest things, because time is so precious. And I kind of see it now with my son, who's going to be a sophomore. It seems like when a baby's born, they're going to be with you forever for 18 years, but now I got a 15-year-old who's starting to talk about colleges and things like that. You start realizing, hey, we're not going to have this guy around forever. 4 years, and he's going to want to go off to college. And what I've done in coaching, where I've kind of moved away from family and been around, but mainly gets to see my family now a couple times a year, my parents, my siblings, and things like that. It's, you want to cherish and take advantage of those times as much as possible. So I think that's something definitely to evaluate as well.
If you're listening to Coach ideas apply to your own program, you can go deeper with the Culture OS Companion, part of our Coach and Coordinator AI. Coach Eck's full culture conversation with Rob Pomazak, along with insights from Alex Golish, Matt Drinkall, Brad Spencer, Derek Leonard, Kyle Ralph, Jordan Lynch, and Brian Dahl, is built directly into the Companion's knowledge base. It takes the core ideas from those coaches and turns them into plans you can use. Weekly culture segments, staff alignment outlines, leadership meeting structures, accountability frameworks, and more. Just click the link in the show notes to launch it. Describe your situation, your level, and what you're facing this week, and the Companion will shape a clear, usable plan built from coaches who have done it at a high level. The ideas are proven, and the Companion helps you apply them.
We're going to piggyback on that last talk about moving and go into our third series of questions called clock management, how you blend family and football. When you have decided to take a new job, what advice do you have for people on how to handle moves? I know you've had to move in a number of different situations, taking a job, getting cut from a job, finding a job. What are some advice on how to handle the moving process, how to ease the stress on your wife? And then what lengths have you gone to stay in contact with your family to get back maybe face to face with them?
Yeah, no, those are some very good things. I think one thing, just like players are, your kids are really going to vibe off your attitude, how you handle things. So I think it's very important to try to be positive no matter what is going on. Even if you get fired from a job or the staff is not retained, make it a positive of new doors opening up and try to find the good in things. I think that is critical, because I think the way that you approach it, the way the attitude you have, they're going to feel that, they're going to vibe off that. So I think that's very important. And again, I think especially if you go through that situation where you have to move, that's critical. I do think it's good as you take a new job, getting the family out there is good, even if it's just for a weekend. I mean, I know when we moved to South Dakota State, our kids were in Montana, and during their spring break, we brought them out. So we tried to do some fun things in the area, take them to the Children's Museum, take them to some of the neat little restaurants in town, whatever it was to make them just associate some fun things with that. take them to the bookstore or the little shop in town that has some shirts and stuff, get them geared out in the new school's colors, which I think is a fun thing for kids. They love to get a t-shirt or something to wear around, or a little jackrabbit doll for the little guy, whatever it is. I think that is a fun thing to handle it. And then I think every family is different. We've done all kind of moves as far as there was a time once where we were tied into housing through the school, so we had to be out by like February 10th or February 12th or something, so the family right in the middle of the school year. At other times when we finished the school year and then had the kids move in the summertime. Our last move did around May 1st, so we got the kids just out here for a few weeks. And I think my wife would say that's probably her favorite now because it gets you plenty of time to kind of say goodbyes and things and feel like you're settling your business at home. Also, you're getting the kids there before summer so that you have a chance to meet a few friends. I was able to get my son involved in baseball in May and June, July then. Some things like that you don't get if you move in June or July. So those are some different things. I feel like I might be missing something else in that question.
No, you're good. I think that's perfect. I think the thing to note for coaches is just a general statement. Those leagues that you sign up for is almost like a full season ahead of time. Like where we live, I mean, the registration for baseball is like in February. I'm like, we don't start till June. Like, what do you mean it's February? So fine, coaches. It gets earlier and crazier the longer this goes along.
You know what? And I found, because I had that when I came here, there were some hoops I had to go through, but usually they didn't make some allowances for us moving in. It was a little tricky because like where we lived, they like kind of had like a tryout draft of the kids, but I was going to miss that. So they were speculating, how good my would be and stuff off that. But originally, like when I read the Watson out, I'm going to have like these that's there. But I think if you ask and explain the situation, we'll be flexible and work with you a little bit on those things.
The next question, and we kind of get the same answers, but I maybe want to dig a little deeper. We find a lot of coaches that in the college season that will say, hey, how do you carve out time? Hey, we go on a date night every Thursday, which is great. Are there other small things that you do to stay connected or make your wife feel valued even during the season, whether it's maybe a text message, an email, a note? Like, is there little things you do to carve out time or attention to maybe help you feel more connected?
Well, I do think this. I mean, everyone in life is busy. You say during the football season, you're very busy, but it's still a nature of you can make time for things. It's what you prioritize and what you invest in to make time for. And probably the one example I learned from in my own career was we had some stressful times in our marriage, and it kind of went at first when I became a coordinator for the first time. Really the only year that I've ever called plays, I was at Minnesota State Mankato. I mean, we had kind of a hectic situation where we changed head coaches during the spring, and I was investing a lot of time in work, and I think it was taken away a little bit from my marriage. And that fall, then, because we were kind of going through some tougher times in our marriage, I really committed to it. It was a little easier because I was a coordinator, so I could kind of set our schedule of when we were going to meet as an offensive staff. But we made a point that we were going to go out for a date night every once a week. And we even went, which was it was earlier in the week than probably, looking back, it was hard, but I made it work and we had a great year. But we went on every Monday night. That was kind of our night there. And then it let me go grind. It did it really early Tuesday and Tuesday, Wednesday. And then kind of we had Thursday. So it kind of gave us 3 nights a week that we'd really have some time. Thursday night, Saturday night, if we had a home game, and then Monday night. So we made it work. We won 14 games that year. It was the most games I've ever won as a coach. We lost in the national championship game. So I think it definitely can be done. It's what you invest in and what you make time. I think it's important that you keep your life a priority. And again, you can't always do that. I don't do that now. Part of it is I'm not the coordinator. I'm not setting a schedule. You got to have a head coach who's on board with things too. But I do think it's important that whatever your schedule is and what you can't control, you do carve out some time for just you and her. And then I do think little things like that, little messages where you take time out of your day can make a big impression. And I don't do that stuff enough. I mean, you do a better job, I think, of taking the time to taking 2 minutes to send a nice text to your wife, because I think that stuff does have an impact and stuff that they really appreciate. It's just a matter, you got to carve out the time and make it. Again, I do think you can do that stuff and not have it have any effect at all.
Yeah, that's key. And it doesn't have a negative effect. Right? You're more clear-headed, and then everything can go a little bit smoother with just those little investments of time.
I think when you have younger kids, I know our younger kids love coming by practice. It gets a little harder when your kids are older, because the older kids have practices of their own and things like that. But we had a great head coach here, Coach Stiglmeyer, who's very family friendly, and he was always okay with kids coming up to the offices, kids being on the field at practice, running around. I think that's valuable, especially any time like fall camp or something. I think a great strategy if you're a head coach in college is having a day where you allow the families to come and just eat with the coach, have a dinner on the cafeteria. And again, obviously, if the guy's got 2 kids and a wife, it's going to add 3 meals to your meal count that day, but they hit a little bit on the budget. But I think the net reward you're going to get from that is a positive, even though it might cost you a little bit on the front end. I think the goodwill with the wives and the families and that time, you're going to get better work out of that coach over the next few days. So little things like that, I think are great things to carve out for families during the season. The other time is recruiting. I know we talked about this last time, but I love to try to involve my kids in recruiting, because recruiting probably is my wife's least favorite part of college coaching, because she doesn't mind the late nights during the season. She knows I'm coming back every night, where it's a little lonelier when you're out of town from Sunday to Thursday or Sunday to Friday morning. And then a lot of times, even during official visit season, you're gone all week recruiting, and then you get back and you have guys coming on official visits. And then even though you're home that weekend, you're running around showing kids campus all weekend. So those are tough times. And I think whenever I can involve my family into that, I love to take one of my sons if I'm going to watch a game on a Friday night during the season, whether it's our bye week or, I know when I was at Mankato, we did a lot of just Friday night recruiting in general, because there was a lot of games we could get to quick in the Twin Cities. I would often take one of my sons with me and they go to watch that game. And, they kick out of it. They go to kids that age, always love to get a bite to eat at McDonald's or something. I even did it. I think I'll probably copy this with my 4th son as well. But my 3rd son, it was the year before he went to kindergarten. So he was 5 years old, and I was recruiting in southern Minnesota at the time. And I took my son out with me for a week of spring recruiting. So we were going, I think, probably Monday morning through Friday. He was a little trooper, man. He'd sit in his little booster seat in the back, and he'd come into me with the stools, and he was pretty good about being quiet. We had a 6 a.m. workout at Caledonia High School in southeast Minnesota, and he was a trooper, got up with me, had breakfast, went to the workout. They got a great head coach down there. He's been there a long time. My name's escaping me right now, but he had his little son at the morning workout. So that was kind of the highlight. You have to hang around with him and run around the gym, his little son. But that's really valuable time. We went to a Minnesota Twins game one night during that, and that was a lot of fun. It was Star Wars night. He's a big Star Wars fan, but a lightsaber out there, and that's one of those lasting memories that my son will always have. So that's kind of a unique, creative thing that you can do. Keeping your kids involved in recruiting, that can really help with the time that you're away a lot.
Yeah, and I think that hearing that story and some of the other stuff, with the time we spend away, some of the stuff we think, oh, maybe our kid won't want to do that. Or I found with my son recently, he's going to help out more this year. It's great about helping around the house. When he gets to come to football practice, he doesn't mind not being by me. He doesn't mind filling up water bottles. He doesn't mind carrying bags. But it's kind of neat. And the cool thing is that I get to give him that experience that few other kids will have, right? And as a high school coach, you don't make a ton of money. It's some of your jobs, right? You're not making the Nick Saban money, right? But you give those kids that experience. And I'm sure that the week you spent with your son on the road was not coming out of the recruiting budget from that school, right? But that time had to be invaluable. And I think that's a really unique lesson for guys is your kids will learn a lot, and it really creates an advantage for them. They get to have experiences that other kids don't, and a lot of valuable lessons that they can learn from being there. And right? Some of the kids, you have a hard time peeling out of bed at 6, but they get to go to a workout and run around like, oh yeah, I'll be up. So I think that's a huge advantage. Don't you agree?
I think so. And I grew up, my father was a college basketball coach, and I still think probably that had a role with me being a college football coach, just seeing that, number one, he always enjoyed going to work. He was never looking at his watch or when do I get home, or dreading going to work on a Sunday night because the next day was Monday. And so I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And I had a lot of good memories of going to the office with my dad, and was going to the gym, my dad being a basketball coach, but now my kids going to the field or going to the office with me. I think that's a lot of fun and a positive impact.
Yeah. Right. Let's go on to the final set of questions called prevent defense, and maybe helping to provide some guys some bigger picture things that can prevent them from losing what's most important. Can you maybe share a struggle you've had as a family or personally over your career, and what lessons maybe could other coaches learn from and how you overcame it?
Well, I would say this. I just think there's times when you can become engulfed in football. You can let yourself spend every free second of the day on football because there's so much to watch. I mean, you can go back and watch a whole season. You can watch NFL tape, college tape. I mean, you really can. I mean, you can write another recruiting note. But what I've learned over time is The most important thing is your family. And there's been times, I think, especially when you have kids, you spend time with your kids, you spend time with football, your wife gets put on the back burner. And all conversations turn towards just the kids. And there's not enough time just to enjoy each other and work on that relationship. And it's just like to recruit. If you don't work on a relationship with a recruit and you're not staying connected and staying in contact, your chances of getting that recruit are not really good. And I think you want to focus on that. And that's something my wife reminds me of. And I thought this was a great coaching point that she had for coaches is you need to treat me like a recruit that has an offer from USC, but I decided to go to South Dakota State. How would you treat that recruit every day? How much time would you spend? And you know what? That's true because he is my number one recruit and she is a Power 5 player, no question. I really outkicked my coverage, but I think that's a great thing. And you got to spend time and you got to invest time and you got to find time to spend with your wife. And again, I think there's probably been times in our marriage where we look back and maybe it was 6 or 8 months between times where we went out to dinner. It can be tough because you're in a profession where you're not making a lot of money and you have kids and babysitters can be expensive and going out to eat's expensive. But even if time's tight and you're having a picnic or something, or you get together with another coach in your staff who has kids and you trade out nights where one night, hey, I'm going to watch your kids so you can go out. And then another night, you're going to watch my kids. That way you take away babysitter costs. You got to be creative. You got to find a way to spend some time where you're getting some one-on-one time with your wife. And again, our toughest times probably were times where we neglected that part, get enough one-on-one time. And I think surely when we addressed it and spent more one-on-one time, it had a positive effect on a relationship. Like I said, with any relationship you have, whether it's recruiting or anything, the more you invest in it, the more you're going to get out of it. So that would be probably the biggest thing I would pass on and recommend to guys is don't cheat your family because they're valuable. And then one other thing I would say is another mistake I've made in the past sometimes is don't take out football on your family. I have one memory. One of my sons was born, in October, and we were having a birthday party. I think for him, he was little. He was probably 2010, so he's probably 8 years old. A few buddies over, a lot of family over, and we had a game where we blew like a 21-point lead. And we have 21-0 and lost the game. And so I was in a bad mood. You're just kind of moping around and everything. And really, kids don't care. They don't care whether you win or lose, especially when they're that age, grade school. You might have a kid who's a junior high kid or high school kid have a little emotional attachment and be disappointed when you lose a game. My 2-year-old has no idea after a game whether we won or lost, and he's just happy to see dad and hang out and wrestle with them or snuggle and watch a show or whatever it is. I think you got to make sure that you can separate that and turn that off and be there and be present, be in the moment with your family. That's something I hope my wife reminds me of. Be present and be able to just really have some time where you enjoy them and you kind of put football out of your mind. And it's tough in college, but I think there's some times. I think this is one of the draws that a lot of guys have told me if they've gone on to coach in the NFL that they like. It's easier to turn off your phone in the NFL because you're not recruiting. But I still think in college you have to have times where you set your phone down or put it away where you can't hear it if you get a text and you're just going to have some family time. And that's something I still struggle with and I still got to keep working on because I think there's some paranoia that, well, if I'm not staying in contact with this kid and someone else is, they're getting an edge on me. Far better rewards having a good family life because that's going to be there throughout your whole life and that's going to be there after football and that's going to be there when you're fired. It's much worse to get fired by your family than to get fired by a job.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. By seeing your commitment to your family, how does that help your players grow as men?
I think it has a big impact. And I think I always try to encourage guys. I think especially I spent 1 year coaching at Hampton University in Virginia. I'm in a pretty fortunate situation now at South Dakota State. I think the 19 linemen we have, some of them are from split families, but I think all probably 19 have their fathers involved in their life. Even if they have parents divorced, they still have a positive male role model where I spent 1 year at Hampton, which is a historically black university. And I believe out of like 18 guys, maybe only like 6 had their dads in their life a lot. And those guys were the biggest ones to set a good example for. And it's hit me because some of those guys have hit me on. Jamal Wilson, who was a good player for us and started for us at left tackle. He's got 2 little boys now and lives out in New York. And he mentioned that to me. I told him, hey, it's great what you're doing with your kids, being a good dad. He said, hey, coach, I saw how you were with your kids. And I think having your kids around, I remember having picture day and having team pictures, or not team pictures, but like O-line picture, the O-line group of my kids. That can be a positive, especially for guys who didn't have a lot of great male role models growing up. Something you take advantage, but it's a privilege to have a great male role model or have a great father or have a great stepdad or a great grandpa who's really involved in your life growing up. because you get that modeled behavior, what it is to be a good father. Where if you weren't around that, you take it for granted. If you have it, that's a big missing piece. So I think as much as you can model that good behavior of being a good father to kids who don't have one, that is a huge, huge resource.
Great. You did a podcast, all of a sudden the onions and dust start kicking off. You start getting emotional about different questions. I appreciate that. It's really cool to hear that story about the player who, like you said, you made a lasting impact, not only in his life, but then really in the life of his kids. And you hope that example carries forward, which I think is probably the reason at the end of the day, a lot of us get in this profession. And it's about football to an extent, but it's more about what football teaches and setting that right example. So I think that's huge. So, all right, here, the last question is I call victory formation. So we all understand coaching is a noble profession and the wins and losses will fade away and things like that. But what legacy are you striving to create for your own family through coaching that maybe you couldn't do in any other profession?
I would think the biggest thing is be an example of serving others, be an example of trying to put other people ahead of yourselves and trying to invest your time for the betterment of others. And I forget who it was. It might have been Jimmy Graham or something who said a coach influences more people in 1 year than the average person does in their whole lifetime. And you're touching a lot of people in this profession. And again, I think your hope is that you're a real positive impression on all those people you're touching. But that you can go both ways too. Again, just because you're around doesn't mean you're going to always necessarily give the best example. So you want to hopefully be a positive example that you're touching people and that you're putting other people ahead of yourselves and that you're serving others and trying to be selfless. And that's not always easy or natural, but I think that's a powerful legacy you can leave if you serve others and make the lives of others around you better. And that's something I keep working on and keep doing a better job of and keep remembering that's the impact and that's why you coach.
No doubt. Well, Coach Eck, we really do appreciate your time. Appreciate you getting back on. And know you guys are coming off the best record in school history at South Dakota State, and you guys are keeping things rolling. It's a tough conference to be in, but I'm sure you guys are going to be fighting again for that top spot. So we look forward to watching you this fall, and best of luck.
Hey, thanks so much, Joel. I really appreciate you having me on, and best of luck with your podcast here going forward.
If today's episode gave you something to think about, you can take the next step with the Culture OS Companion, part of Coach and Coordinator AI. Coach Eck's Culture OS interview with Rob Pomazak is one of the core conversations inside the Companion, and it helps coaches turn big ideas into clear, usable plans for their own programs. You can access it right now for free using your existing ChatGPT account. The link is in the show notes. Explore it, share it with your staff, put it to work inside your program. This is the first tool inside Coach and Coordinator AI with more on the way, each built to make proven coaching ideas easier to understand, easier to organize, and easier to apply. Start with the Culture OS Companion. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.